Well, howdy folks, welcome to Mower Mike's. If you're watching this video, I am sorry because you're probably going through one of the most frustrating problems with outdoor power equipment. That is when you go to crank it and you turn that key and just nothing happens. It just pisses me off more than anything. It's a very frustrating problem. So what I'm going to do today is walk you through the process I use to try to diagnose why your lawnmower is not cranking, because it's not just one thing. It could be several things. So we're going to walk through just narrowing down what that issue is, whether it's the battery, the starter solenoid, or maybe one of these pesky safety switches. And the mower we've got to work on is one of my neighbors, and it is a peach of a mower. This thing is awesome. It's an old 42-inch Gravely, probably about 20 years old, with a Kawasaki. Just a really good example of a sweet lawnmower, and the reason I do this. So with that, what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and slide underneath and check the battery. And I'm going to show you how I do that, and then we're going to move on to the solenoid and the safety switches to try to figure out why this lawnmower is not cranking. This one really is broke, folks, because ain't nothing happening here. But it's all right, so stay with me and let's slide underneath this seat. All right, the first step on any electrical adventure to try to figure out what is wrong is always to look at the battery, because that is the easiest thing to look at, and probably about 50% of the time that is your culprit. Now on the battery, before you start testing things and squiggling around on here, I want you to look specifically at the positive battery terminal, because a lot of times on a battery, this terminal either can be loose or you'll notice that it has a lot of buildup, like specifically yellow, nasty looking sulfuric buildup. And always look at that, make sure it's tight, and if it has buildup on it, go ahead and clean it. You can use Coke, you can use carb spray, get yourself a little wire brush and clean her up. But you see here, this one is looking pretty darn good. So the next step, we want to test the battery voltage. So for that, you're going to need yourself a multimeter, and you're going to test the DC current voltage. On this one, they've always got two squiggly lines. That's going to be what's testing your DC. On the bigger ones like this, you know, you probably put it down there. You can see it tests the DC. And what you do is you just put the positive on the positive, the negative on the negative, and let's see what she comes out to. All right, tell me what it comes out to. All right, see, we're rolling at 12.5 volts. Anywhere above 11, 12, 13 is good. So you can see this battery looks good. But now I want to do another test before we move on from the battery. And what we call this is a drawdown test, because sometimes the battery can look good when you look at the battery just when it's chilling. But when you actually put a load on it, it could cause that battery juice to go down below, let's say 10 volts. And sometimes that will prevent it from actually creating a crank. So what we're gonna do here, I'm putting on some extenders, these little clips here, little alligator clips. That way it's going to free up my hands. So you can see right here, we got our alligator clips going to our voltmeter there, and we're reading at 12.5 volts. So next thing we need to do, we need to crank the lawnmower. Now this is a little trickier than you think, because typically you want somebody sitting on the seat to activate the safety switch underneath the seat. So you can either do that and have these little clips or something, as long as they're touching the terminals, or you can reach underneath the seat like I've got here. I'm just gonna manually push it down as I crank. So I've got it down, so it should crank. And you see here, we've got nothing. I'm cranking and it's only going down maybe half a volt. It should be going down more than that, so you can tell it's got an issue. But again, if you turn that key and it goes down to, let's say, 8 volts, that battery could be shot and you might need another one. So those are the two battery tests. Also just go ahead and do a visual of the wire, specifically of this wire, which goes to the solenoid, and then the wire that goes from the solenoid to the starter. Make sure they're tight and good. All right, so we know the battery's good. So next what we're gonna do, we're gonna move on to the starter solenoid and talk about that dude, because that's our number 2 culprit. Stay with me. Our next step is to move on to what we call the starter solenoid. And to move on to the starter solenoid, the first step in that is you've got to locate it. I can see on this old Gravely, it is underneath the control panel right there. A lot of times they're towards the rear of the motor, behind the engine. Some of the older mowers actually have it hooked onto the starter itself, which makes things a little more difficult, but most of the time they're going to essentially look like this. And what a starter solenoid does is that you're going to have one wire that comes straight from the positive terminal to the battery, and the other terminal on here goes to the starter. And the way it works is that you've got two wires usually here, or one, and what the one is a trigger wire. So the wire goes from the ignition switch, which is hot, and then it goes through all the various safety switches and everything. And if everything is good and we have power going all the way through, when you turn that key, it shoots a little 12-volt pulse down here and you get it hot. And what happens then is that when you get a little hot wire going to here, there is energy stored up in the solenoid. This is the copper wire, coiled wire in here, and it triggers the power to go from here, which is the battery cable, to the starter, and that's what causes it to start, because it allows more power to go to the starter versus what it would go if you just wired it straight to the battery. So in summary, battery hot wire goes to the starter, gets a shot of electricity when you turn the key, if everything is working, and bam, bam, bam. Now, the first thing I like to test, and the most important, is, are you getting electricity when you turn the key? Because if you're not, then that signals that you probably have some sort of issue between your ignition and the starter solenoid, which a lot of times is those damn safety switches. So what we're going to do is that you can see underneath here, this one here should be our trigger wire. We're going to test it with a testing light like this right here. So the way this works is that you take one side, it's got a little clip, you clip that to anything negative. It can go to the negative terminal of the battery, but here I'm just clipping it to a piece of metal. And we clip this on, and if we have power, you'll see it light up. If we don't, we don't. Now, another thing is that I am running quickly out of hands. So what I've done here, just to bypass the sweet switch, I just shoved a wire in there. This is something I commonly do, just so you don't have to mess with the seat switch and you don't have to have anybody sitting on it. So in theory, we should be hot. So when I turn the key, it should shoot electricity to this wire here. So, all right, so we got it in here. Let's see. All right, you can see there. Let's see if we get hot. Hey, we got hot. So this is a huge positive sign for us. It means that we're getting hot power to our solenoid, and we've got hot power going here. So this really isolated it for me, showing that it is probably a bad solenoid. So another check you can do, let's say if you do not have hot going to one of here's, but you want to check and make sure the wire going to the solenoid is good. You want to check and make sure that starter is good. You can do a little hot wire test. Now, this is slightly dangerous, as you're going to see, but if we go ahead and short circuit these two terminals, you'll be able to hear it if it starts. So this bypasses all the safety switches, bypasses the ignition. So you can see there? So you can see the starter's good, the ignition is good, but it sounds like that solenoid is bad. Now, some other things you can check. There are, of course, the safety switches. You're going to have to safety switch here underneath the seat. You can check that with ohms to make sure when you activate it that you have connection. And the ohm setting, you'll see it. All right, another thing here, you're going to have to safety switch, like this one here is connected to the parking brake. So this is always a good check too. Sometimes they're underneath the lawnmower, but that's a good one too. Also on these Gravely's, you've got these transistors here. I think they're transistors, but these are super cheap. You can just buy new ones of those. Sometimes that causes the issue. So what I'm going to do now is that I'm going to swap it out my starter solenoid for a brand new one, which is super easy. I can see you got 2 bolts there, a couple bolts there. I do suggest before you do this, go ahead and unhook the battery so you don't shock the piss out of yourself. So I'm not gonna bore you with that, but we're gonna go ahead and swap it out. I'm gonna sit on top of this lawnmower and see if it starts. I have never actually started this lawnmower, so if it does, I'll be pretty stoked. So stay with me. All right, we got the moment of truth. We're gonna try to start this thing. Now, I give it about a 50-50 this thing actually starts. I have so many issues with electrical problems, but if it does, it is freaking exciting. All right, so I've got the seat hot wired. I still got my wire in there. We got her in neutral. Let's see what happens, folks. What is going on? Okay. Look at that. Oh my gosh. That is awesome. My neighbor Jim is gonna be so stoked. Now, I do want to stress, with electrical issues, you can be super, super frustrating. My advice is to take your time and use your mind. You may not find the answer on YouTube. You may actually have to figure it out yourself and get a manual. So that, Mower Mike's out. Hopefully you learned something, and we'll catch you next time. Bye.